Hey, Joe Gilder here from homestudiocorner.com/PreSonus. If this is the first PreSonus Studio One tutorial that you're watching from me, head over to homestudiocorner.com/PreSonus and you'll have access to all the other free ones available to you. You can watch them all right now. maybe break it up into chunks. I wouldn't recommend that many at once. So this is actually video number 100. If you remember when I started making these videos, I promised you at least 100 videos on PreSonus Studio One. So I've done that in addition to a bunch of live stream videos I've done with PreSonus, which have been super fun. Hope to do more in the future. But in this video, I've almost forgot to cover this in the previous video, so I'm glad I thought about it. I want to show you the K system, the K system metering system that is available to you right inside of Studio One. Just to clarify, the K system for metering is something that you can buy third-party plugins to give you this metering system that allows you to kind of have some sort of a reference point to know if you're mixing or mastering at a reasonable volume. And you're not over mixing, you're not mixing too loudly or limiting your masters too loudly. And you can buy those plugins for as much as a couple $100 or more to have those meters available in your system. Well, if you own Studio One Pro, you have those built into the system, which is super, super cool. Now, how do you get access to them? And I'll explain briefly how I use them. So if you want a full explanation of the K system metering system, go Google it. There are some white papers out there that will explain it very, very well. But it's basically a combination of, well, let me show you. Your typical meter, if I hit play over here, your typical meter, which is peak RMS, will give you these top lines are bouncing, showing you the loudest part in your mix. And then these white lines are the RMS, or the average level of whatever audio is coming through right now. And the goal when mixing and even mastering is to get a nice distance between your peak level and your average level. The closer they are together, the more compression and limiting you've used, which you're starting to limit the dynamic range of your mix. So you don't want it to get you don't want these two to be too close, because that means you've compressed the snot out of the mix and you've lost all dynamics. So this all came out of a place of trying to give people tools to keep them from over-processing and mixing and mastering their songs too loudly, to where you lose a lot of the punch and a lot of the dynamic range that makes it sound good, all at the expense of something being quote-unquote loud. So this is the normal metering. This is the metering that you see on individual channels, minus the white lines for averages. So to switch things out, if you right-click on the meter here, now you can select between 4 different meters. So peak RMS is the one you're probably used to. K20, K14, and K12 are the K system meters. So I'm going to show you K20. So the real basic overview, I use K20 and I use K14. K20 for mixing, K14 for mastering. So K20, you'll see the meter changes slightly as far as the layout of the numbers. 0 has gone from being up here somewhere to right here about a third of the way down. Now when I hit play, you'll see the meter has changed colors as well. It is now a green meter. Okay? When it crosses the 0 threshold here, then it turns to yellow. And then when it gets up even higher, it turns to red. I'll show you that really quickly by just cranking up the volume of my buses, or just cranking up the volume of this band right here. Okay, so as I turn it up, you'll see, all right, now it's getting into the yellow and we're getting a little bit of red. So the idea here is you want most of your mix to hang out at 0, and the kind of the moderately loud parts of your mix to be in the yellow, and then the really loud stuff, which we can just throw a mix tool +6 on here to get it really loud. Really loud stuff to maybe get into the red a little bit. Now again, this is not clipping red. This is simply just showing you your relation to, if this is your average level, now you're up 6 or 8 or 9 dB, 7 dB up. And in this instance, we're clipping, okay? Because we're spending way too much time in the red. Our mix is actually clipping. So there's a couple things going on here. If you use some moderation in your mixing and mix at conservative levels, then you don't have to worry as much about clipping anyway. One way to make sure you're sitting at a consistent level is to simply make sure, once you've got your rough mix going, make sure your levels are hanging out around here or lower. I tend to mix pretty quietly because I stay so far away from clipping. But if you're up around here in your normal parts of your mix, you're good. You can see mine are getting close to there, and probably my mix won't even get up into the red. And that's totally fine. For mastering, however, it's a little bit of a different story. So if I switch to K14, now basically this is saying there is a difference of, basically, let me restart that. K20 metering means at 0 dB here, we're at roughly -20 on the typical standard digital meter, okay? So as you can see, 0 is clipping in a digital system, so when you get down to -20, -18 or so, if your mix is hovering around their average, then that means you'll have plenty of headroom to get a nice punchy mix without having to overcompress to keep from clipping, okay? So K20 is the larger number because we have more headroom there. K14 is what I use for mastering, and that moves the 0 up a little bit. So if let's say I'm mastering this song, I'll put a mix tool on here, and I'll put a limiter on here, okay? The limiter is set to -1 ceiling, which is perfect. And then the mix tool, I'll just use this to crank up the mix to get my level up to a decent level, okay? So I'm starting to turn it up. I'm turning it up. Now I'm in the greenish, yellowish range. If I keep turning it up all the way here, okay, now I'm really kicking the red. And we can see if we go to the limiter, we can see I'm hitting the limiter really, really hard. Cool thing about the limiter in Studio One, you can also have that be K14 as well. So let's say to make things simpler, I will turn off this mix tool and just use the limiter. So I'm turning it up, I'm turning it up, I'm turning it up. Okay, now we're averaging a little below 0. Let's get a little bit more. Okay, now we're hanging out right about the right volume. So you can see I'm at K14. The average level is hitting around 0, and you'll see the limiter is just barely getting touched. So I can probably go a little bit louder if I want to. Get up into the yellow a little bit more, and it works fine. And if I wanted to push it a little bit more, you can still see I'm just having a little bit of limiting every once in a while, about 6 dB probably on a kick drum or something. I can crank it up even more to where now I'm in the red. So if it's in the red, it should be at the very, very loudest part of the song. And if you have a lot of red, you're probably mixing a little too hot. And so I bring this down, and if I let you hear what I'm doing, so it's that when that cello comes in, it's hitting into the red pretty hardcore. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit more. Okay, so we've turned my mix up 13 dB, but when it's hanging out around 0, again using the K14 system of metering, it's just hitting the limiter and knocking off 3 dB or so. So I'm not going to over limit this because I'm kind of keeping it in that range. So if you tend to over process things and make them too loud, you'll notice you'll start to have to back things off a little bit. And what you'll notice, I hope, is that it sounds better. Now you may be asking, what's K12? I think K12 is just another step louder. I think that has to do with broadcast audio, which tends to be a little bit louder. So if you're doing commercials or I guess voiceover things for radio, I think K12 might be where that comes in. But the people who know this, like Bob Katz and Ian Shepherd and people like that, I think Bob was the one who designed it. They say typically, easy rule of thumb, K14 for mastering, K20 for mixing, and you're good to go. And I've been doing that for a couple years now, and it's really working well. I have to try really hard to clip a mix or to overmaster something because it's kind of giving me my own sort of accountability to keep me from going overboard and going too far. So if that sounds way confusing to you, maybe you're just starting out with mixing, don't worry about that. I'd say just leave it like it is with just the regular peak meter system and go to town. What I will say is if you start your mix and you see that your levels are way up here, go ahead and bring everything down. Before you get too far into the mix, just click the farthest track to the right, scroll all the way to the left, hold down shift, click the farthest track to the left, and just bring everything down, okay? Because you will inevitably start clipping your master bus, your mix bus here. You'll see a light up that says it's clipped. And once you start reaching that, then you're going to be constantly having to pull things down and reworking things to make it work. You'll be much better off having a nice conservative level on your mix, and then you can always bring up the level in mastering later, like I just showed you, and have a nice clean mix with plenty of dynamics that has no clipping whatsoever. That's the safe way to go about it, and in my opinion, that's the better way to do it to get the best sounding mixes without over-processing and over-limiting and over-compressing things. Okay? Well, thanks again for watching these videos. If you haven't checked out all my other free, absolutely free PreSonus Studio One tutorials. You can check those out at homestudiocorner.com/PreSonus. And if you're into home recording and want to learn more about all the other aspects of it, for example, mixing tutorials on how to record, a weekly podcast where I answer your questions, all of that's available over at homestudiocorner.com. I encourage you, go check it out, subscribe, come say hi, and we'll make better music together. Thanks for watching. See ya.